The second part of our discussion of the skin involves skin pigments, which are skin colors, hair, and nails, and how these accessory structures, hair and nails, aid in the functions of the skin. Skin colors, or pigmentation, are generally composed of three pigments: hemoglobin, which is the red pigment of blood cells; keratin, which is the yellow pigment that concentrates in the stratum corneum, the most superficial layer; and melanin, which comes in yellow, black, and brown hues. This is the pigment that is synthesized by the melanocytes down in the deepest layer of the epidermis, and then passed on to the keratinocytes. We secrete more melanin when we are stimulated by UV radiation. This is why you get a tan when you go out in the sun. So if someone has very little melanin, then you can see through the layers of keratinocytes, and you can see the hemoglobin in the blood vessels underneath their skin. So individuals with light skin you can see their hemoglobin a little bit better, and they tend to flush more easily and have more of a ruddy complexion. If you have more of a yellowish tint to your skin, then you have lots of keratin that has accumulated in the stratum corneum and possibly in the subcutaneous fat. The darker your melanin is, the more it's going to hide the red and yellow pigments. Abnormal skin colors include cyanosis, which is a blueness from deficiency of oxygen in circulating blood, which sometimes is due to cold weather. You'll notice that if you have seen children after they've been playing out in the cold, sometimes their lips will look slightly blue, and that's a cyanotic coloring. Erythemia is redness due to dilated cutaneous vessels, which can be caused by anger, sunburn, or embarrassment. I think we've all experienced these situations before and noticed the flushing of our skin. Pallor is a pale color from lack of blood flow. This is when all the color drains from your face. That's called pallor. Jaundice is the yellowing of skin and the whites of the eyes. The whites of the eyes are called sclera, and this is due to an excess of bilirubin in the blood. If the liver doesn't correctly process and excrete bilirubin into the bile, it can build up in the blood and cause jaundice. Albinism is a genetic lack of melanin, and this means that the individual will have no melanin in their skin as well as no melanin in their hair. So they tend to have very pale skin and very pale hair, pale blonde or white hair. The genetic lack of melanin is a challenge because without the protection of melanin, more UV damage results to the dividing keratinocytes, those stem cells in the strata basale. The bronzing of skin is a golden brown color, kind of like a nice tan, but it can be due to a couple of diseases. One is Addison's disease, which is a deficiency of glucocorticoid hormone, so that's mainly going to be cortisol. When there's a deficiency of cortisol, it feeds back to the hypothalamus and the pituitary and causes release of corticotropin releasing hormone, which then stimulates a protein hormone called melanocyte stimulating hormone. So this melanocyte stimulating hormone will go through the blood and stimulate the melanocytes to produce this bronzing. But what the body is really trying to do is increase the amount of cortisol. So it's kind of a side effect of that deficiency in cortisol. A pituitary gland tumor, anterior pituitary, can also cause excess secretion of MSH, which is melanocyte stimulating hormone. So the same hormone is responsible in both cases. However, one, it's due to a tumor with abnormal excess secretion of that hormone, and the other one it's due to a dysregulation of the negative feedback system. Vitiligo is a chronic disorder that causes depigmentation patches, basically very pale or white patches on the skin. and it's likely a combination of genetic factors coupled with a disorder of the immune system where the melanocytes are attacked by our own immune system. And finally, we have a hematoma, which is a bruise or visible clotted blood. I think we've all experienced a hematoma at one point or another. It starts out that lovely dark purple shade and gradually fades through shades of blue and green and yellow as it is dissolved and reabsorbed by the body. So hair is our next topic of discussion. It is composed of hard keratin, so it's the same protein that makes up our stratum corneum, but it's arranged slightly differently. It's a little bit more orderly in its arrangement. So hair is dead keratinized epidermal cells, and one of the keys in the keratin in our hair is disulfide bridges between different keratin molecules. Disulfide bridges are very, very strong and do not break easily. So that's what allows our hair to grow and stay long without just sloughing off like our skin does. Hair is found almost everywhere, but genetics, hormones, and nutrition determine how thick it is and where it is. So males clearly have beard hair. Generally, females do not have facial hair. Some individuals may have thicker arm or leg hair, whereas other individuals do not. Some hair types are vellus, which is the fine unpigmented hair of children and women. That's kind of like just the fuzz that you have on your skin. And then we have terminal hair, and that's going to be our coarse, long, pigmented hair of the scalp. So generally when we're talking about our hair, we're talking about terminal hairs. So the structure of a hair and a hair follicle. A hair is going to be a filament, which is basically a long strand of keratinized cells. In cross-section, we are going to have three parts to the hair. So this right here is the hair, and the middle part of the hair in here is the medulla. The outer part outside of the medulla here is the cortex. And finally, we have an outer cuticle, which is this layer right here on the very outside of the hair. So those are the three layers of the hair. The follicle is an oblique tube within the skin. Oblique means diagonal. You'll remember that from our discussion of terminology a couple weeks ago. The bulb is where the hair originates. So it's at the very deepest part of the hair follicle. And in that bulb, we have vascular tissue called a papilla, which provides the nutrients to the growing hair. Interestingly enough, the way that our hair gets its shape is based on the shape of that filament. So straight hair is very, very round in cross-section. That will result in straight hair. Wavy hair is more oval. So you can see this hair here is more oval in shape, and that indicates that this hair would be wavy as it grows out. Hair color is dependent on the pigment cells in the cortex. So you can see there's not very many pigmented parts in this cortex, so this is likely a blonde hair. We'll talk more about that in just a second. Another comment about this drawing, all of these pink cells are the hair follicle. So all of these are epithelial cells which make up the hair follicle. So the layer closest to the hair, those are going to be some of our epithelial cells. So one interesting thing about burns is that these epithelial cells will actually reproduce and push up the hair follicle and help to heal both burns and abrasions. So basically when we need to regenerate our epidermis, these epithelial cells from the hair follicle will grow up the hair follicle and then help to regenerate our epidermis. Hair color and texture. We talked a little bit about the shape of the hair filament and how that impacts texture and whether the hair is wavy or straight. But the pigment that is produced by the cells of the cortex is also going to impact the color of the hair. So brunettes have a variation on the melanin pigment. It's called eumelanin, and that colors hair brown or black. So you can see that this hair is fairly round, which means that it's going to be fairly straight, as you can see from this picture. And the cells of the cortex are producing eumelanin, which is going to be a brown pigment. So we have brown or black straight hair. Blonde hair contains a pigment called pheomelanin. And this pigment has a little bit more of a golden or reddish hue to it, and it contains very little eumelanin. The darker blonde the hair is, the more eumelanin that is produced and incorporated into the cortex of the hair. So this hair is blonde and straight, you can see, because the hair is nice and round. That's going to give us straight hair. Red hair contains very little eumelanin, so not as much of the brown-black pigment, but lots of pheomelanin. So that, remember I said that pheomelanin is kind of a reddish color, so it has lots of that pheomelanin in red hair. And you can see from this picture that the hair is more oval in shape, which results in wavy or curly hair. So the shape of the hair and the pigments that are produced, the melanin variants that are produced, both impact hair color and texture. White or gray hair is when we have the medulla, which is no longer filled with cell products, but it becomes empty, and the cortex no longer has pigments in it. So without pigment, the hair appears very light gray or white. So as the body ages, it produces less pigment, less melanin, and one of the effects of that is that less melanin is produced in the cortex of the hair, and you get white or gray hairs. You can see that this hair is oval shaped and therefore ends up with a wavy hair texture. So the structure of the hair follicle includes the shaft, the hair shaft, which is above the skin, and the follicle, which is below the skin. The follicle is mainly composed of epithelium that surrounds the growing hair. You can see the actual hair right here. So the hair is going to be produced from this papilla here. So this area is the papilla. And that's where you would find blood vessels that will deliver nutrients to the hair. You can see that we have some melanocytes. They're going to be the ones responsible for producing the pigment in hair. And we have the medulla. You can see the medulla forming this yellow portion here. And then out here we have the cortex of the hair. So this is the hair as it develops, and these melanocytes are producing the pigment that is then taken up by the cortex cells and gives our hair its color. The root of the hair, so this is the hair root, this portion. Around the hair root, this portion, we have the root sheath. So the root sheath has two portions. One is the epidermal portion, which has two layers, the internal and external root sheath. So this is going to be our epithelium that surrounds the hair. And then we also have a dermal root sheath. So that's going to be this portion here that's part of the dermis. So the hair follicle extends into the dermis, so all of this is dermis around here, and almost gets into the subcutaneous tissue. You can see the adipose tissue that's in the subcutaneous layer. So around each hair follicle, we have receptors, and so those receptors kind of just circle around and branch out, and these are what allows our hair to feel when it is disturbed or moved. So when you feel a breeze and your hair starts to move, or when something's crawling on your hair, those hair receptors detect that movement. The other thing that's associated with a hair follicle is a piloerector muscle, or erector pili, and they kind of sit right here. It's a kind of small band of smooth muscle, and when these contract, it will pull the hair up. So it will pull it to be in a more erect position, and these will also cause goosebumps. We're going to take a look at these when we look at the hair in lab. The functions of the hair are going to be 5. So body hair is too thin to provide warmth. If you went outside in the winter without any clothes on, you would get cold very quickly. If my big furry dog goes outside in the winter, he has sufficient hair and fur to keep him warm. He just curls up, puts his tail over his nose, and he's fine. If I went outside, even in just a t-shirt and shorts in the winter, I would be shivering very quickly. So our body hair, the main function of our body hair is to alert us to parasites crawling on the skin. So all of those creepy crawlies, when you feel something crawling on you, it's generally because it's disturbing the small hairs on your body, and that signal is getting transmitted through those hair receptors up to your brain, and your brain goes, ew, creepy crawly, and you can kill it or brush it off. Our scalp hair does help some with heat retention. If you've ever shaved your head, you know that it's a little chillier without that scalp hair. And it also provides nice sunburn cover. So unfortunately for all of those bald individuals out there, a hat or some serious sunscreen on sunny days is very important. Now our scalp hair does not give us enough heat retention to have us avoid wearing clothing. So it's not enough to provide warmth for our entire body. It just does help us retain a little bit more heat on our head. Our beard, pubic, and axillary hair indicate sexual maturity and help distribute sexual scents. We also have guard hairs and eyelashes. So guard hairs are the hairs you find in your nose and in your ears. And these help to prevent foreign objects from getting into our nostrils, ear canals, or eyes. So they help to keep things out of our eyes. They guard those openings. And our final function of hair is expression of emotions with our eyebrows. If you've ever noticed little cartoon figures, they often have very expressive eyebrows. So you're able to express quite a bit of emotion with those eyebrows. Nails are the next accessory structure to skin that we're going to discuss. These are a derivative of the stratum corneum. So once again, that keratin is what makes up our nails. And these cells are densely packed, and the keratin is strongly bonded and hardened. Our flat nails on the back of our fingers allow for very fleshy, sensitive fingertips. The growth rate is about 1 millimeter per week. So after 3 or 4 weeks, you can measure your nails, see if they've grown 3 or 4 millimeters. New cells are going to be added by mitosis into the nail matrix. The nail matrix is this part of the nail here, this very back portion of the nail, that's underneath that nail fold. So that nail, that skin that protects your fingernail, protects your nail matrix, where we're generating new cells and new fingernail. The part under that nail fold is going to be called the root of the nail, and then the visible part of the nail is the nail plate. So this visible part that we can see is called the nail plate, or the body of the nail. The cuticle, if you've ever wondered what the anatomical name for a cuticle is, it's the eponychium. So that's your cuticle. Big fancy name for the cuticle. And the fingernail can be used in medical diagnosis. If you have iron deficiency, you will get concave nails. So instead of being convex, this shape, the nails will tend to be more concave, this shape. They'll be depressed in the middle. And that is a sign of iron deficiency. In the next section, we'll be discussing more accessory structures of the skin, our glands, and receptors.